part of the ocean that we could call pristine, that the human hand can be found everywhere. I grew up in a family that was dedicated to giving back. We decided together as a family to do a bigger project. We had a vision to create an aquarium that was unlike any other. We wanted to share the seaweeds and the jellies and all the things that comprise the ocean to inspire conservation of the ocean, because it's hard to care about something that you don't know. We are committed to becoming part of the solution through science and conservation. If we're talking about saving the planet, we're talking about saving the ocean. We created a Seafood Watch program that's promoting sustainable fishing and farming all over the world. We've had a long-term commitment to education, creating the next generation of ocean conservation leaders, getting more girls and young women involved in science and technology. And we are working to develop new technology and inventions to understand the ocean with focus on the deep sea. But there's still a lot of work to do. What we hope is that people will just be awed by the beauty and diversity of the ocean, and that they'll decide to take action on its behalf. Just like humanity, the ocean is full of diverse life, and it's going to take all of us to enable a positive future.
Well, it is absolutely wonderful to be here with you, Julie. And in the video, you said if we're talking about saving the planet, we're talking about saving the ocean. How can saving our ocean save our planet?
Well, great, and thanks to everyone for being here. It's so fabulous to have so much marine life here. We can have a fest about it, because that wasn't always the case. So let's start right there. Well, of course, the ocean covers most of the planet. Let's start right there. But as many of you know, like more importantly, in 3 dimensions, about 99% of living space on this planet is ocean, and that's where most of the life exists. And so, even though I actually I don't usually use the phrase "save the planet," because after all, the planet's going to be fine after we're gone. You know, what we need to do is protect and restore nature. And when you're talking about that, it's really mainly about the ocean. And as terrestrial species, you know, most of our energy, of course, is here on land, and why not? But we need to really start paying attention to the part that, you know, creates a huge amount of the oxygen we breathe, pantry for billions of people and economic livelihoods, drive world climate, all the things that a healthy ocean makes possible for all life, including us, is what we need to be focusing on.
So you grew up on an apricot orchard and have described yourself first as a plant nerd, but that passion turned toward the sea. So I was curious what prompted your interest in the ocean.
Yes, well, I had the great privilege of growing up in rural Santa Clara Valley back in the day, before it was Silicon Valley. I don't know who grew up in Santa Clara Valley, but we all hate Silicon Valley, okay? That's what it was, the Valley of the Heart's Delight, the most amazing agricultural area ever. And I spent a lot of time outdoors, and I don't know, the plant nerd thing, I just love plants. I mean, we spent a lot of time out, you know, my dad had cattle ranches, and I have to say, really, I mean, it comes down to photosynthesis is the most awesome thing on the planet. You know, we all wouldn't be here. There'd be no oxygen, you know, all of us animals wouldn't exist. So I just always had a fascination, and I went to UC Santa Cruz and started out just doing a biology degree. It was back in the day. That's the only degree they had. They didn't have all their specialties yet. And took all the botany classes that I could, and came to a point where there was an intertidal field biology class that involved going out and studying the marine algae, which were absolutely fascinating. And I did that and ended up working for my professor, and that kind of became a passion, marine algal ecology. And that's when I ventured into my ocean interests. So actually, unlike some people who are ocean folks, my family, we never went to the ocean when we were kids. We went to the mountains. So we all can get to our life's paths in many ways, I guess, is what we can say about it.
That's good, guys. So I'm dying to know this. What is your favorite sea creature?
Well, okay, you said creature. I mean, my favorite thing in the ocean would have to be giant kelp, because I'm an algae person. Mm-hmm. But since you said creature, I have to say I become really fond of the ocean sunfish, the mola over the years. Since the aquarium decided to take our mission offshore and take people out beyond the bay and show how this bay is connected to the broader open ocean, and we got thinking, okay, what lives out there? What pelagic open sea animals could we exhibit? And we, came up with ideas, did a lot of R&D. But the ocean sunfish, which we have on exhibit, not all the time, but a lot of the time, and all of you who spend time in the bay, you're familiar with this animal. And I don't know, it's the underdog. It's just like an unlikely, who came up with this design? It looks like it was designed by a committee, and it eats jellyfish. It's not a top predator. It's not a shark. It's not a tuna. It's just, it survives by getting really big, really fast, It's the size of a Volkswagen. It can weigh 2,000 pounds, and it's just out there eating jellyfish and I don't know, like I said, I like it because it's not what you expect when you think about fish. And that's really our mission, at the aquarium is, the ocean is not what you think. And 30 years ago, that was really true. Now, because we have so much more exploration of the ocean and all the digital media, you all get to see all the crazy stuff in the deep sea and, animals at the aquarium and all the amazing underwater photography. But, at the time, it used to be fish and marine mammals, and that's kind of it. So anyway, I'm a fan of the weird and wonderful, and the mola is one of those.
The idea behind the Monterey Bay Aquarium began when your parents, David and Lucille Packard, asked you and your siblings to come up with a big project. I'm curious what the life lessons are that your parents instilled in you.
Well, my parents were, they were remarkable people, and they were also extremely involved in the creation of the aquarium. I mean, oftentimes the founding group, which I was not part of the original founding group, it was my sister and her husband and their colleagues Steve Webster and Chuck Baxter. They had the original idea and got me involved early on, but honestly, if my parents weren't, they were much more than funders, let's just say that, because what did we know? We were just biologists. And so some of the life lessons that I still, remember every day, or things that I live, we all have the values that we got from our upbringing. And, probably first and foremost, with my parents, and especially my father, was to just be open and respectful to all people. Arrogance was just the worst possible quality in our family, and we were raised acknowledging we were privileged people, and we needed to be open to ideas and respectful of all people, and that was really my dad's. That was how my dad lived his life. He would much rather be out with his ranch hands than in a management meeting, believe me, and so that's something that we really picked up. And then obviously the conservation values, the environment was, and science, curiosity, a scientific view of the world, those were things as well that were very, big underpinnings in our family. And giving back. My dad was brilliant, and if anything, you don't be a slacker. That was the main message from him.
You recently wrote a book about the Monterey Bay Aquarium's first 35 years. The aquarium opened on October 20th, 1984, and here is a picture of the crowds lining up on Cannery Row on that opening day. How did the aquarium differ from other aquariums at the time?
And Mayor Clyde was there. You saw us. We were right in his corduroy jacket, very snappy. God knows what I was wearing, 80s style. Anyway, well, our concept for the aquarium really was drawn from our backgrounds as invertebrate zoologists and me being a marine algal ecologist. And so we weren't fish people, any of us, and we weren't marine mammal people. And our idea was to show, and we were inspired. We had gone to school and done our graduate degrees, spent a lot of time diving in and around Monterey Bay, and knew it was just amazing. And we wanted to share that with the public and really show people what the ocean was really like. And so that was an important underpinning that was really critical. We we wanted to bring new species to the public, and of course that's innovation in bringing new animals to the public has been a real underpinning of the aquarium from day one. And all of our work to bring jellies and all the jellies exhibits that you see at all the aquariums around the nation now, and our cephalopod exhibit, which is fantastic, keeping all the wild and wonderful cephalopod species. Those are the things that we wanted to really work on. So that was a big piece. We wanted a big connection with the bay. I mean, at the time, and this is still largely the case, most aquariums, you're in a dark corridor. There's no windows because the tanks really pop and look great. Then the exhibit designers, and architects, like, put it in a black box. And we're like, no, are you kidding? I'm like, we've got this amazing site here on Monterey Bay, and you can see this ocean life right offshore. Like, we don't need to have marine mammals in captivity here. You can see it right offshore. So connection with the bay, and that was a real challenge for our architects. And then we didn't want people to be on a forced march one-way path like a lot of aquariums. We wanted, it's a what you call free choice learning museum environment. We want you to find your own path, and what interests you, do that, and hopefully like go in and outside our building and make the connections on your own. We wanted to have a fabulous volunteer guide program, so we had a lot of people, a lot of person-to-person interaction to get people fired up, and we're so grateful to the 1,400, I think that's the number now, volunteers that we have from this community and beyond. Unbelievable talent and passion that they're sharing along with all the teams that do that. So those were some of the underpinnings. And then I guess last but not least, the Hovden Cannery was really the inspiration for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. If Stanford had purchased that cannery just as a buffer zone, because there was a lot of development plan at Cannery Row, and was a group at Hopkins that had the idea inspired by that cannery. So without the Hovden Cannery, there would be no Monterey Bay Aquarium, I can say that. And so we really wanted to honor the history of that building and hire a team that could do something that really retained the look and feel of the cannery and kind of built on the rich history in this bay, which is just about successive cultures coming through here for centuries to take advantage of the bounty of this bay. And the sardine era was one piece, and now the bounty of the bay is all about wildlife viewing and people coming, and it's not based on an extractive relationship like it used to be, but the cannery was a key driver. So those were some of the main things. And finally, I'd say we wanted a really interactive, interpretive experience, and some of the science museums, like the Exploratorium, was really at that time really pushing the envelope on what we now call interactive exhibits, where you're not just reading a graphic. And we wanted to take some of those different interpretive techniques and put them in an aquarium setting just to, just make the interpretation of the learning much more interesting and engaging. So we had those were a lot of ideas, but those were the main ones.
So like the touch pools and... Yeah,
the touch pools and some of the interactive exhibits that kind of make you look closer, and like we have actually one my dad worked on that's still there is in the intertidal zone exhibit, kind of out by the Bat Ray and aviary area. There's a surge channel tank that you can crank a crank and see how the fish living in the surge channel, they like align against the current, you know, so that, and we had like a video camera, you know, just things where people could explore on their own or try things out, you know, make things happen to look at behavior and like that.
So one of the aquarium's legacies is the Seafood Watch program. Could you just tell us a little bit about this program and its successes? And then I'm also curious about what does the future hold for this program?
Yeah, for sure. Well, don't get me started on Seafood Watch. It is such, I mean, I'm so proud of our team. It's unbelievable the impact that this, at the time, this seemingly simple idea has had. I mean, it's now truly a driver of global impact and global change in terms of how seafood is fished and farmed. And as a lot of the audience probably knows, you know, it began as a consumer awareness program to, we did a very, kind of our first really heavy-hitting ocean conservation exhibit, Fishing for Solutions, What's the Catch? And from that we decided, that was in the late 90s, after the Outer Bay Wing opened. And we decided, hey, we better get our menu in order or we're going to look really lame. We're talking about all the problems with global fisheries, and then we don't want people to go down to the restaurant and like order some things. They just, you know, order some shrimp that's got all this trawl damage and bycatch and all of that. So we did that for our own purposes, and our guests were super interested in it, and it kind of spun up from there into the Pocket Guide. And from there, though, I mean, the whole idea was creating consumer demand to drive business change. And so, you know, after that consumer demand got rolling and there was a lot of media attention, the media was even, you know, a bigger deal than just individuals. We shifted. We were able to shift to the working with retailers and the strategy of, you know, let's work with these big retailers because they're hearing about it and they don't want to look bad. And so we and other NGOs started having partnerships with the big retailers, you know, the Safeway, the Walmarts, the Costco's, you know, the big players. And it got to a point where, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, 85 or 90% of these big retailers, they all have time-bound sustainable seafood commitments, which is amazing. And all the NGOs agreed to, what does this mean? Like, so they'd all make the same ask. That was really exciting. Then the problem became, where in the world are we going to get all this sustainable seafood to meet this demand? And so now the Seafood Watch team is working with the producers. And that's really exciting, really happening at a global scale. And right now, for example, we have struck an agreement with a couple of really big players. One, Minfu Seafood, which is in Vietnam, one of the biggest shrimp producers. I learned myself just not that long ago, something like 40% of the shrimp that we eat here in the U.S. is from Vietnam. Really interesting. And shrimp farming, of course, has a lot of, you know, if done right, it's fine, and it's a really important economic driver in especially Western Pacific nations and other nations, but most of it is not done well. And so this particular commitment is, you know, working with the government and this big producer on a commitment that they've made, and they're putting millions of dollars into it themselves, to bring 20,000 plus shrimp farms up to a Seafood Watch green rating, which is amazing, you know, over a time-bound period. So those are the kind of things that the Seafood Watch team is working on, which is super cool. So for any of you who are aquarium members or donors, thank you, because things, you know, my view on, you know, there are all these problems happening in the ocean, but fixing overfishing and damaging aquaculture is something we know how to solve. We know how to do it right. So let's take care of that. You know, we've got to deal with climate change and plastics and all these other things, but the extraction of seafood from the ocean at the scale we're doing it with and the way we're doing it is, it's really escalated just in the past, really 25 years to be just a serious problem. So it's been really exciting to see this, you know, essentially market space strategy working with business drive change. Meantime, of course, there are those who were promoting, we should eat less animal protein. That's great. That's important. Go vegan. That's all good. The space that we decided to work in was, in the meantime, change takes time.
Yeah.
And again, it's a huge enterprise. And so anyway, I'm really excited about the progress that's happening. And I guess the final frontier is to get the governments to put in place regulations. Because right now, this is all voluntary. But if you could get these businesses then to say, hey, we need the Vietnamese government to establish aquaculture standards so our company has a competitive edge over the others, and the U.S., like Seafood Watch, is doing the matchmaking with the markets here for these retailers. It's really going to drive change. It's very exciting.
So you mentioned climate change. The aquarium's mission of ocean conservation is more urgent than ever. 2019 was the warmest year on record for our world's oceans. And the first ever United Nations report looking at the climate impact on the ocean was released last September. What impacts are we seeing right out here in the Monterey Bay?
Well, that, of course, all of us working on ocean issues, we were, it's daunting, but we're very happy to see the IPCC release this report that brought to bear, the ocean in the climate change picture, because it's really been missing. It's been missing in so many ways in terms of impacts of climate change on the ocean, but also as important, if not more important, the role of a healthy ocean in mitigating continued climate change, and carbon growth and carbon emissions. So the things that are and of course, we are seeing changes right here in our part of the world. That's the thing about climate change is many of these environmental issues we're working on are more localized. I mean, certainly, shrimp aquaculture that's damaging mangroves, that's affecting communities there. Carbon pollutions, greenhouse gas pollutions affecting everyone. Here in Monterey Bay, and actually I was just chatting with some of the scientists from Hopkins Marine Lab at Stanford, which, Mayor Clyde, you forgot that institution. Very important institution. Call out to the Hopkins folks if you were missed. Yes. One of the really interesting studies that they've done, Hopkins is the oldest marine lab on the Pacific coast. They have this 100-year-old data set on animals living in the intertidal zone there. It's really a remarkable resource. And a number of years ago, some of their students and faculty started redoing the transects and really, looking at species changes. And we have seen from that species that previously you'd only find south, or you'd only find north of here in, colder climates. They're showing up here, or rather south of here. Things that like the warm water are moving up here, algae species and also invertebrates, which is a big deal. The other thing is the ocean is we have just a lot of volatility and crazy things happening. People have heard about the warm blob, the big patch of super warm ocean, which was anomalous. We've got the El Niños and the La Niñas and the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. I mean, scientists have realized we have these long-term cycles in the ocean of warm and cool water. But also these days, we're just having weird things show up that they're not easily explained. But obviously, a lot of scientists think, okay, this definitely is linked to climate change. And something like the warm blob, as you know, I mean, that whole situation prevented uplanding here, and we had massive die-offs of marine mammals and a whole lot of animals that either had to travel way further offshore to find their food, and just the whole productivity of our system here was really altered. So those things are going to be continuing. And then finally, this is something that we don't see every day, but ocean acidification, which you all know about, is, in my opinion, maybe the scariest thing happening in the ocean. And here in Monterey Bay, because we have a lot of upwelling and cool water, we're already starting from a more acidic baseline. And so it'll be interesting to see, how that, there have been some papers saying, it's happening faster here than other places. I don't think the scientists are quite aligned about that, but we're going to see some changes around that for sure. And then finally, I'd say the big thing, the emerging thing, that to me is very disturbing, is our kelp forests. And you may have read about, the warming waters really taking a toll on the kelp forest distribution. And actually our team here at the aquarium is looking at the long-term historical records, gathering all the long-term historical records we can find to look at, what does that picture really look like, and what is the trend, and that's really disturbing. I mean, without kelp forests, kelp forests are just such an anchor to the biodiversity that we have along our coastline here. So that's a really critical issue. And interestingly, this isn't written up, or I don't know if it'll be an official paper or not, but just an anecdotal observation that our scientists at the aquarium shared recently is if you look at the map, the kelp forests here on the stretch of Monterey, at the edges of Monterey Bay and around the peninsula actually look pretty good in terms of decline compared to the other peripheral areas. That just, by happenstance or not, it completely overlaps with the southern sea otter range here. Because the sea otters, of course, having sea otters around is good for kelp forests because the sea otters eat the things that prey on the kelp forest. So we're more and more working on the idea of, sea otters as ecosystem engineers, if you will, and the positive impact they have on restoring ecosystems up and down the coast. So that's a really interesting emerging area of research that's going on.
Something I think people have been able to get involved with is, reducing their single-use plastic. Obviously, Monterey and Santa Cruz have worked to do that. What is the aquarium doing in the face of that, and what more needs to be done on a global scale?
Well, single-use plastic, as we all know, is just like risen out of nowhere into the news. It's really a big deal, and my view is it's not the biggest threat to the ocean, but it's an incredible. It captures people, and it's something that connects with all of our everyday lives. So that's why we do have it as one of our big issue areas in conservation at the aquarium. And some of the things that we're working on, certainly, encouraging everyone to support their local measures. That's where it all starts. And actually, we have a big collaboration of 20 aquariums across the U.S. that called the Aquarium Conservation Partnership, where we're all promoting local and regional and even the state where they might exist measures about reducing single-use plastic. And the angle that we are focusing on is not on the cleanup angle in many people's opinion. That's too late. And by the way, there's so much plastic in the ocean. I'm not saying it's a waste of time, but we really need to reduce the source. And so, and one of the really exciting things that people can keep an eye on is California has a state bill that's working its way through the legislature that is the most progressive leadership bill of any state. It's about source reduction and the circular economy, and it establishes a goal that by 2030 all packaging and single-use plastic needs to be compostable or recyclable, because the problem now, as is like a lot of it's not. And then also that basically by 2030, we need to just get away altogether from plastic packaging, and it'll probably, may involve a tax, for example, and it's very forward-thinking, and it's doing pretty well. It didn't pass last year. We thought it would. It's being amended, but hopefully it'll go through. And if it doesn't, advocates want to put forward a ballot measure, in which case we will really need to mobilize everyone around that. So knock on wood that goes forward. And in the meantime, just support those local and regional measures and talk to your well, in California we're kind of in a little bubble here of awareness, but when you're other places especially, talk to people about it. So it's an important issue that the aquarium's working on.
Education is also a big pillar of the aquarium, and last year you opened the Bechtel Family Center for Ocean Education and Leadership. And I was just wondering if you could tell us about that center.
Yes, we are so excited that with the help of our donors and supporters, and of course the aquarium team, we decided to make a big move and expand all of our education programs, and that required new facilities, because the original aquarium, we get about 85,000 kids visiting every year, and then plus their chaperones and teachers, it's over 100,000 coming for educational purposes. And only a fraction of those got to be in a classroom in a staff-led, actual facilitated learning program. So we wanted to get where we had a goal where every child that comes to the aquarium, by the way, all of our programs are free, which is really unusual. I don't think there are any other aquarium in the U.S. where the education access is free. So, and we're raising endowment money to ensure that'll be the case forever. Some future board doesn't reverse that. So we want to get everyone into facilitated hands-on program, and then expand our teacher professional development and teen programs. And the teen programs are awesome, and the teens, we've got our teen conservation leaders, which kind of encompasses our student volunteers, our summer volunteers. We've got a deep dive program in the Pajaro Valley School District up in Watsonville, and then we have our Young Women in Science program. We have a whole suite of teen programs because those kids at that age, that's when you can get them fired up about environmental values. So we're aiming for STEM education, yes, but our goal is next generation that's ocean literate, inspired, confident, ready to act. So it's grown to be as much a leadership development program as let's learn some facts about the ocean. So we were able to raise money to build this beautiful new center. You'll see it on Cannery Row, and the kids are already coming through there, and it's just a really cool space, very flexible. We've got a maker space where the kids are learning design thinking. And as Mayor Clyde said, that the next generation, they are so inspired and inspiring and kicking us in gear. And the aquarium is such a great resource to develop a whole cadre of young people to carry on. And our goal isn't go get your PhD in marine biology. It's much broader than that. It's become a teacher or an environmental lawyer, like whatever you're doing, be involved in your community, be an advocate, be a leader, get engaged on behalf of the ocean.
Fun fact, you have a portrait in the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and she's only the second woman in marine science to be included in the museum. So here it is. And I just wanted you to tell us about what that experience was like and how the artwork got made.
Well, first of all, it was very weird experience for me. I'm not actually one looking for visibility usually, but I said, of course, given the cause, they're trying to get more women and more scientists in the portrait galleries. I'm like, that is definitely needed. I mean, obviously, it's mainly presidents in there. I don't need to say how many older white guys are in there. And so I'm like, yeah, of course, I need to say yes. But I told them, I said, I'll do the portrait, but it needs to be mainly about the ocean, and then I can be in it. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you, I'm not going to be there and like sit for a little portrait. So then we had to go about finding an artist, and it needed to be a woman, and I wanted someone who, I wanted a contemporary artist. And anyway, we kept talking about different people, and I'm not part of the art scene. I really have no clue. But anyway, they suggested this amazing woman, Hope Gangloff, who's in New York, and very successful, well-known artist. And she drove out here. She doesn't fly.
Oh, she drove.
She drove out here with her dog, and her husband's a professional artist too. And they stayed in Pacific Grove and some low-key accommodation for a week. And she just went crazy, drawing around the aquarium. And I think she first thought that, she was thinking, oh, it's this woman I have to do a portrait of. She doesn't ever do commissions also. She's just a real free spirit. She does her art. I think she was like, well, what are we going to be like outside with the ocean behind you? I'm like, no. When you get to this aquarium, you'll get it. So she just went crazy running around and drawing the fish and the animals and the color. I mean, she uses a ton of color. This doesn't anywhere near represent it. And we just hung out. We totally hit it off. And it was so interesting for me because her brain was so unlike the people I usually hang out with, and she was so talented and creative and just all her art all the time. And she does a lot of political art, which it was kind of interesting they selected her because if you go on her Instagram account, she was like flaming lefty, and she does some great political art, great anti-Trump art and this and that. I'm like, well, hopefully they won't see that part, But anyway, it was really cool. It was really fun. And art is, I was just so thrilled to have an ocean conservation message in this National Portrait Gallery. It gets, 5 million visitors a year or something. And the people in there, they're not ocean people or science people. They're people coming in and, how great that they can learn about Monterey Bay Aquarium and see a kelp forest and a woman who's, doing some conservation work. So anyway, it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. No single group of people or organization can solely educate the entire world to preserve our oceans. Who in the coming years will the aquarium partner with to expand and expedite greater awareness of education and action toward preserving our oceans?
That is an interesting question. One of the things that, we partner with a lot of entities. When working on a policy initiative, obviously we align with the other NGO advocates who have big advocacy lists. Our membership we have by far the largest membership of any aquarium at 75,000 households, but obviously the big advocacy NGOs like WWF, they've got 1 million members. So we'll align around policy issues together for sure that are, that we share, and there are many of those. The last 2 years, I have to say, a lot of them have been about defending the environmental policies that we've all worked so hard for. So that's a new part of all of our agenda. We're a little annoyed we have to spend time on that, but those are the times that we're in. And but one of the things I'm really excited about is this aquarium conservation partnership that I mentioned. And Monterey, in part because of the aquarium and our mission and who we are, but also because of all of you, because people in California that care so much about the environment, we've been able to really, redefine the public aquarium as a force for conservation and not just an attraction. That's been my vision, but, there's no way that it would happen without the people to buy in and to contribute to that vision. And so I've kind of had, once the aquarium got on its feet and could pay its bills, and then we launched Nambari, then I'm like, okay, we need to get all these other aquariums to follow our lead and to really realize what a force for conservation they could be, especially those in places that are, red states or areas that are not as, enlightened as Californians are. So for years I had this idea, we need to get a consortium of aquariums together to work on policy and advocacy together. Finally, 5 or 6 years ago, it started to spin up, and now we have this group of 20 aquariums that are an official thing, the Aquarium Conservation Partnership. We're not branded or anything. We each, advocate using our own institutional brand, but we're working together on a conservation agenda, and plastic pollution was the first thing everyone agreed on. Again, some of those aquariums, in like Tennessee and Texas, much as I wanted us to work on climate, that wasn't going to happen. We had to kind of ease into that. So we've been doing plastic, and now climate is on the list. And of course, Seafood Watch was our first collective impact national, partnership program. We have, I don't know, something like 200 Seafood Watch partners that are distributing Seafood Watch information. So that through all the zoos and aquariums and museums and, state park offices and all of that. So those are some of the partners that we have. And because we're part of the zoo, aquarium, museum field, that's been our sweet spot on that, because traditionally a lot of these zoos, were more animal menageries, aquariums kind of the same, and museums for a long time they felt we're just here to impart information, we're not supposed to express a point of view, and I really don't agree with that, especially in these times. So that's been fun to move that needle.
We're in the year 2020 now, and I'm curious what's on the horizon for the aquarium.
Well, the big thing that our team is working on right now, which is very exciting, is we're working on an exhibit about the deep sea, which some of you who've been around for a long time, you might recall we did a special exhibition called Mysteries of the Deep. That was back in like 98, 20 years ago, anyway, however many years ago. Wow. It required a lot of R&D, really hard, of course, to be able to bring any of those deep sea animals into captivity, even not dealing with pressure, even the one just collecting them, even if you're not trying to keep them in a pressurized tank. So we were able to make some progress with that, and then we just decided, okay, it's time to kind of broaden the horizon on all that we've learned about the deep sea and the importance of all the biota there. And then, of course, we have new emerging resource extraction topics that are spinning up, like deep sea mining. You might have read something about that. There was a big, really disturbing article in the Atlantic about it. We all love our cell phones and our electric cars and, all those rare earths that the world, claims to be running out of them. And for a long time, we've been talking about mining the seafloor, and that whole topic is coming upon us. So anyway, in 2021, probably, we haven't set a date, but we're going to have this great exhibit about the deep sea. It's going to focus a lot on Imbari and their work, and it's going to be down on the first floor of the aquarium. Kind of when you look downstairs in the big window, you'll kind of begin there. The window of the open sea exhibit. You'll start your tour there and kind of go down from there. So TBD. That's a big thing. And we're expanding all of our expanding the education programs and Seafood Watch and all the conservation policy work's going really well.
Cool. A lot to look forward to then. So I think we have a few minutes if anyone in the audience wants to ask Julie a question. You might have to shout pretty loud. I'm not sure if there's... Oh, we have the cards. Perfect. Does anyone want to ask Julie a question?
Questions, anybody?
There's got to be one.
It's all perfectly clear.
If you want
Okay, we got one here.
Hi. So with your time with the aquarium, what was the biggest undertaking as far as like exhibits go in the aquarium?
After we opened, well, that would be the open sea wing, what we call the outer bay wing. We're real purists about the Monterey Bay theme. Like, one of the things my dad would always say was, more organizations die of indigestion than starvation. So, and we all read in the business leadership about focus. You gotta have focus, and when that's what brings people down. And so, we were like, this place is about Monterey Bay. We're not going to deviate from that, and except in the special exhibits, we'll take people different places. But when we decided, because we had the property next door, where another cannery had been that burned down, we thought about what we should do over there, and that was in the early 90s, and we decided let's take people offshore, show them new animals. There weren't any open sea animal exhibits in the US anymore. There were, or ever rather. There were, the Japanese are they've got more sophisticated aquariums than any nation. So they were doing some interesting things, and we decided to do that, and it was very complicated to design a tank, very challenging to design a tank, essentially, where you could keep open sea animals that, most of which have never encountered a hard surface in their lives. And so there was a lot of, there is just many complications, or many challenges, design. That exhibit, it's shaped like an egg, so it has a liner in it that's doesn't have corners or nooks and crannies for the animals to navigate. And then the water offshore is warmer than right here onshore, so the aquarium had to, create a whole different semi-closed water system to keep the water a little warmer, about 68 degrees, which is what it's like offshore. And although more and more, like the Bay will probably get there. I haven't thought about that. Maybe we won't be having to heat that water, but that would be a sad state of affairs. We wanted a really big viewing window, and finding a company to build that huge window, which is actually several panels that are welded together. We had to have a Japanese company did that. And then our big giant jelly Chrysler tanks, those were a real stretch, so to speak. So that was a big challenge, but the team did amazing work with it.
Anyone else?
As the aquarium, in their consideration of looking at take from fisheries, considered the water issues in California and how take from the oceans for desalination might be a future issue for our coastal environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Desalination, of course, is alive and well in our state, and very controversial, a lot to study. At the aquarium, we were kind of trying to stick to our area of expertise in that whole debate. I mean, obviously, there's carbon emission. I mean, there are many things that one can, argue with about desalination. But in terms of the ocean impacts, yeah, I mean, we followed the EIRs and now that they have like the beach well, intakes and the entrainment stuff, and of course, in the Coastal Commission doesn't allow open water intake anymore. We've been sticking to that piece of the picture. The thing about it is, though, like many things, the cumulative impacts are the part that really would need to be considered, in the long term. And overall, I mean, the more we can do water conservation and reclamation and find other solutions, the better. As you know, Peninsula has done an amazing job at all of those things already. So, yeah.
Question?
Well, thank you so much. And I think we're out of time, but there are a limited number of
One more question.
copies. Oh, one more? Okay, let's do it.
Okay. What else can we do to stop the temperature going up in the oceans except not polluting? Can we help it?
That's a big question. Well, I mean, all of you, I'm sure, keep up on the climate change news. Really, I mean, we just have to fire up and take action and get the right people in office. I mean, it's not any more complicated than that. So, the only other thing I'd say, there are more, as we know that we're not going to be, hitting that 2 degrees C target, the horses left the barn or whatever. More and more people are talking about adaptation, and also, of course, there are those talking about geoengineering and cloud seeding and all that stuff, which, in my opinion, that is that's a last resort for sure. The adaptation, though, we do need to start turning, it's not throwing in the towel, to be realistic and say, hey, sea level is going to rise. No matter, even we did everything right now, sea level is going to rise, the ocean's warming. There are going to be all these impacts, and we do really need to turn our sights to not only getting the right policies and the right people in place, but also to doing that planning and getting our municipalities and our counties and our states and the federal government to fund, what are the best solutions to adapting to what's in the future for all of us.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Julie.
Yeah, thank you.